All right, so we'll do a deep dive into selecting objects. I know I did the intro last week. It was kind of quick, but let's slow it down. And this tutorial is to focus on just selecting objects. So let's go ahead and do that. And in order to get the command line to read selecting objects, you have to be in an editing command. And I keep saying editing, modify command. So any one of the commands up here, if I'm in that command, first of all, look at the command line. Let me tap the escape key for a second. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Command line is empty. As soon as I click one of these modify commands, like move, as soon as I click that, it goes into something called select objects mode. I'm in this mode now. And um, let's say, how should I put this? If I want to type L for line or CO for copy, it's not going to work because I'm within select objects. I'm not back at the command line. So within select objects, here are the options. How do I select objects? First of all, obviously, clicking on them works. So I can pick this object, I can pick that one, and I can just go through and pick every single one individually. And that would be time consuming. So the other options while I'm on the screen here is to basically just click anywhere on the screen, and I recommend click in the middle, just the middle of the screen, nothing gets picked. One click, and then you move your cursor, and if you move your cursor to the right, doesn't matter if you go to the bottom right or top right, you're going to get this implied window. And the implied window turns this shade of blue, and then it's a solid line. And that means that anything that is going to fit 100% inside of this implied window will then become a selected object. So I didn't pick anything, but here, I know that maybe I want to pick this door, the bifold there. So I'm going to click right here, and then I'm going to move my cursor, and then I'm going to click right there, and you'll see that it tells me that it found 6 objects, and then it's giving me a running total because I had picked these other 2 before, so I now have 8 selected. So implied window always goes from left to right. So if I click here, I go to the right, that's the implied window. I click, it selects more objects. All right. The other one that we used last week was the implied crossing window, and it goes in the opposite direction. Again, click anywhere in the middle of your screen. One click, and then as you move your cursor, either top left or bottom left, anything that crosses through this green shaded window that has the dashed lines, as long as it's just crossing ever so slightly, it's going to be selected. So right there, the arc and that polyline are crossing through. If I click now to terminate, to end that implied crossing window, it tells me that it found 2 more objects, and now I have a running total of 16. Those are the 3 quickest ways to select your objects. Now, I'm going to tap the escape key. I'm going to start over, and I'll just pick copy for this instance. Not that I'm going to copy anything. So once I click copy, it says select objects. So now, instead of just clicking, I can go ahead and type W and enter. And when I type W, I'll click in the middle of the screen, and then you'll see it is going to force an implied window no matter what, because I asked it to do that. So W, when I'm in select objects mode and I type W, it's going to give me this window. Good. And let's say I pick these objects here. Done. And then it goes back to select object mode, and that W, no longer valid. And if I click again, like this, notice how it goes back to either the implied window going to the right or implied crossing going to the left. I'll click here, nothing is selected, and I'll use the next option. This time I'm going to type C and enter. C for crossing window. Anywhere I click and anywhere I move, it is a crossing window because I typed in C. So I'm just going to let it cross through this arc, and I'll click on it. So that's how I can use the W and the C to force it. Then from there are other versions of that. So I can type in, and I don't type these in too much. I hope I get this right. CP, enter, and that's a crossing polygon. And I can click here, there, 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 and I can create this nice, interesting polygonal shape that lets me select everything that it will cross through or be inside. And then I right click and enter, and it selected those objects. So that was crossing poly. And I believe the next one, CW, would that work? Enter. No. Window. Sorry. Wait. I'm confusing myself. Let me look at my command line for a second here. CW was a crossing window. And what's the regular window? A crossing poly? CP? Is that the one I just used? Yeah, that's the one I just used. Sorry. Crossing poly. Um, is there one for just an odd shaped window? Let's see. Select objects, copy. W. W just gives me the window. Um, window poly. Give me one second. Window poly. Yeah, window poly. Okay. So WP, window poly. Apologies, I don't use these a lot anymore. And you'll see why in just a second. All right, so I can create that shape by typing in those keywords. And then I right click, enter, and I'm all set. Object selected. So you can do that. And then the other option here is pick one of the commands. I'll pick move again. And this time, instead of clicking on an object, instead of just clicking and moving the mouse, I'm going to click and drag. When I click and drag, it starts to create this shape. And depending on the direction I go, I'm going to get either a window or a crossing window. And this is the one that's really helpful. And I can do this, and here I can bring it back in this direction. So I can do some really interesting shapes and select all these objects, release the mouse, and it selected all of them. If I go in the other direction, if I click and drag and I go in this direction, let's see, it's supposed to give me, oh, in this direction, yeah, I have to start going to the left, and then I can generate that implied crossing window. So those are helpful. So that's really nice. Um, and then after I have my object selected, let's say I accidentally picked an object that I didn't want. I can hold down the shift key. And when I hold down the shift key, then I can deselect objects like this one and this one. And if you zoom in real close, you can see. And let's say I want to deselect all of these. I'll hold down the shift key and use an implied window to deselect them. Done. And then if I wanted to select them again, I just take my finger off the shift key and I click on them. Now, if that's too tricky to do at first, holding down the shift key, you can type in R for remove. R, enter. And that's going to remove objects. So now I'm not in select object mode, I'm in remove object mode. And now all I have to do is the same way that I selected, I can remove. So I can use an implied crossing window like this. I can use an implied window like this. And it's just removing objects. And you can see down at the command line, it says 6 found, 6 removed, 9 total. So it's keeping track of everything. So that's the remove. How do I go back to selecting objects? I think I need to type in A for add. Move, yes, A for add, so I can add objects. So that's really nice. Let me tap the escape key and then show you one other thing here when it comes to selecting objects. And this one is pretty neat. So let's say I want to move objects, and let's say I want to move all of them. Well, just type in all, A-L-L, enter. Selects everything. But let's say I wanted to move everything except these bifold doors over here. I hold down the shift key, I click, not click and drag, I click, and then I click over here, and those objects are deselected, and everything else is good to go. So that's kind of a quick way to do things. So you have 30 objects and you want to select 25 of them, then the other 5 you can remove just as very easy, rather. Okay, did I cover everything? I think so. Before you use the all, I do highly recommend you do a zoom extent just to make sure that when you click or select all, you are in fact picking everything on the screen. Okay, that's what I wanted to go over. And then one more option. I think I showed this to you when we were doing the assignment where we were trimming, but I want to remind you again. that you can also use the fence option. So if I click on move like this and I select objects, if I click here and I go over, notice how I get the implied window, nothing else, right? I can type F for fence. F, enter, and it's a fence line. And I can click here. And as long as that fence line crosses through these objects, they're selected. So have fun with that. You see that? And then enter. And they're selected. So fence also works. All right. I think that was it. If I remember any more, definitely will share out. But that should do the trick in terms of selecting objects. Oh, one last thing. Let's say I move these objects, and I'm just reinforcing what I talked about last session. Let's say I go to move and I select the objects right here and I enter. As soon as I enter, they become part of what AutoCAD calls this a selection set. So this is the current selection set, these objects here. And then it says 12 found. Okay, so I click here and then I move them. Let's say I just move them up to this location. Done. Now, if I go back and use any other command, let's say, for example, I use mirror, doesn't matter which one. If I type P, P stands for previous. So I type P, enter, and that picks the previous selection set, which happened to be these 12 objects. So it's kind of helpful to know that. You don't use it that often, but it's just good to keep in the back of your head that you know that those are the previous objects. Okay, and then I'm going to tap the escape key. And then one more if you don't mind. I'm going to draw a line. And I'm just going to draw a line from here to there and enter. Okay. Let's say I want to move an object and I want to move this line. Well, that was the last object I drew. So all I have to do is type L and enter. And then it picks the last object. So that's the line. I enter, it picks it, and I'm able to move it. And then if I type M again, I can type L for last, but I can also type P for previous because it was the line and enter. And then put it back wherever I want, like this. So last is another option. And here, I'll draw another line here. I'll put another one here, here, there, and I'll stop. Now watch this. If I type E for erase, enter, L, enter, and enter again, that was the last line. Cool. Now, what if I try last again? E for erase, enter, L, enter. That was the last object I drew, enter. So think of AutoCAD as keeping a list in inventory, and it remembers in what order everything was drawn. So if I wanted to, I can keep doing this, L for last, and it would go back and erase every single object that I've drawn. Not that I ever want to do that, but AutoCAD is keeping track of these objects on your screen. And when you select them, create the selection set, P for previous, all of that. So just keep all of that in mind, and I'm going to be using those options quite a bit when I draw. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So let me see if there's any questions. Okay, then we're okay, and enjoy drawing and practice using all of those different techniques, different tools, so that you can be very effective and efficient with your drawings. All right, thank you.